Davis steps under center. Gibson and McClendon behind him. Davis with motion by Richard. Will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh, he doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way. At the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory.
Left side of the line. Hood standing to Williams' right. Williams gonna throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Connor Barth for the possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barth. Good gosh, dirty!
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. Big Heads Media Podcast.
Hey guys, and welcome into this mid-season edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It is Anthony Pagnotta back with you guys. As always, Josh Marlowe is here as well. And it is time to do our mid-season awards. The bye week couldn't have fallen at a better time because it allows us to do this. So we're going to give out our mid-season awards: offensive MVP, defensive MVP, overachiever of the year so far, as well as best game, best play, and best coaching job. So, I don't know where I would say we're going to start with offensive MVP because that's the most obvious one, and that's the first one that I read off. So that's exactly how this is going to work. Also, the first on my layout sheet here. So I feel like most people are going to have the same answer to this. Like Sam Howell's probably going to be the one that everybody's going to go with. So we'll talk about Sam in just a minute. But is there anybody else that you want to include on this list? I've got two guys that I think we should at least consider, but is there anybody in your mind that you think should be considered here besides Sam?
Yeah, you got to mention Javonte Williams. The success he's had in the running game really has allowed Sam to be effective in the passing game because we've been able to establish the run consistently in just about every game, which was something we've struggled in years past. Mention him. What Diami Brown is doing on the outside. We kind of, in the preseason, we projected this guy to have a breakout year. The kind of offense was going to suit what he does best, which is, find grass. And he's had a couple home run plays. Under the radar, guys, that you maybe could mention what Brian Anderson has done the last couple weeks. Not, I know he's a center, but this was a guy when you lose.
I had Charlie Heck as one of the guys that you should look at.
Yeah,
he's such a big part. But yeah, no, I get it. Okay, that's a good one though. Anderson deserves some recognition for stepping up these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's definitely, and I wrote about this after the Georgia Tech game. He's really settled in, more comfortable with at the line of scrimmage with Sam. Their communication has definitely improved since he took over from the Miami games when Polino got hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yep.
And it's been fun watching an offensive line that was very good last year. Started the year off very good, got beat up, and now they've kind of regrouped. And Brian Anderson's a big part of that. So Javonte, we're as big a fan of his in terms of just the way he runs the ball. He runs hard. He's a grown man. Really like what Diami has done in this offense, and then Brian Anderson, probably my three guys. If I'm not saying Sam Howell, I'm saying.
Well, I have Javonte Williams on there. 492 yards so far this season, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Doing some things out of the backfield as well. 10 receptions for 96 yards. I mean, that's not great, but when you looked at Javonte Williams, I don't know if a lot of people thought he was going to be a great receiver out of the backfield, but he's been phenomenal so far this year. closing, I mean, look, through the first 6 games, it means 8 yards off the pace to be a 1,000-yard rusher. It would be the first since Elijah Hood did it back in 2015. So he's off to a fantastic start. De'Ami Brown, as you mentioned, 24 receptions, 424 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He scored in all but 1 game so far this season. And, yeah, he is on fire. He has been, to me, the best receiver on this team. I think, you can go back and forth with him and Daz Newsome, but this is a guy that has elevated his game after a somewhat of a quiet start last year to his career, but he fits this offense so much better. And as you've mentioned, he's given the Tar Heels a deep threat that they kind of lacked since Matt Collins was on campus. I really like what we've seen from him. And then, I mentioned Charlie Heck. That would be another guy that you can maybe put in there. Again, an offensive lineman, but you just see how valuable he's been by, the game that he missed against App State and how different that offensive line looked. Now these last 2 games that he's been back, playing with a broken hand, against one of the most physical teams in the country in Clemson, and then doing it against Georgia Tech as well. He's been fantastic. And then, I guess Daz Newsome, I guess you could include in there, leading the team in receptions, up near 400 yards, receiving just a little bit short of that. And then the only other one that I would think, Michael Carter, maybe, 387 yards rushing, 107 yards receiving. He does have 2 receiving touchdowns, but hasn't scored on the ground. So, those are just a couple of the names. But let's talk about the guy that we both have as our offensive MVP for the first half of the season.
I never said Sam was mine. You just answered for me.
Okay, is that who your offensive MVP is for the first half of the season?
I don't know. I think Phil Longo deserves some credit. This is coming after the week after I completely ripped his play calling. So now I'm just being a
coaching.
cynical,
of course,
being a cynical jackass. No, the easy answer is Sam. He leads the ACC,
right.
And entering last week, he led the ACC in passing yards. He probably dropped because of the off week. Was leading the ACC in passing yards. But
right.
Even if you don't look at the numbers,
yeah. I think Newman's ahead of him, but Newman got injured in the game, so he's going to be close still. That's impressive, yeah.
Even if you take away the numbers, he's on pace to throw for 30 touchdowns, only to get 6 picks. Mm-hmm. Mirroring what Mitch Trubisky did his 1 year in Chapel Hill before he left for the NFL. He's just there's new life in the offense. There's a air of confidence, swagger. He makes plays when the game's on the line. Every week we've seen that. 4th and 17 against Miami. South Carolina came back from double digits down in the 4th quarter. Mm-hmm. So it's an easy answer. It's not surprising because we knew what he was capable of when he got the job. But I think what's been really fun is we've seen him grow in the offense every week. And and that's something that you normally don't see with a young quarterback, but you're getting that with Sam. As every week he's getting better at the little things that he needs to get better at.
Yeah, he's working through his progressions a lot better. He did, his best game came against Georgia Tech right before we hit the break. So I agree with that. I'm not going to say that we're not a little bit surprised. Let's be honest. We knew that this kid was talented. I don't know if we knew that he was going to come in and be this efficient. I thought, just from watching him in high school, he did take a few, not too many risks, but he was a guy that really trusted his arm and trusted his receivers. And we've seen, some of the other freshman quarterbacks, guys like Bo Nix, who's extremely talented at Auburn, guy like Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. They turn the ball over a little bit because, they are trying to make plays. This kid is he's so ahead of being a true freshman when it comes to his decision making. He's a guy that's so smart with knowing when to take risks and when not to. We've talked about it every time that we go into the stadium and watch him throw. This is probably the best thrower of the deep ball that we've seen for Carolina in a long time. Of course, we've only really been watching Carolina in depth and knowing everything that's going on, for probably the last 10 years. But this guy, he's just different. His ball placement when he throws it deep is phenomenal. And, you're talking about a kid that's just tough as nails. This guy took a beating from the Miami game through the App State game and has done a great job. Is still a guy that will stand in the pocket and take the hits to make the throws. And the biggest thing is when it comes to clutch time, he is a guy that knows he has to turn it on, and he does a great job of doing that. I mean, I was talking with Chris McLean, who does the morning show here in Charlotte, when I was out watching the Georgia Tech game with them. And he said, it's crazy, man. This is a kid that literally looks better when the pressure is on than when there is no pressure. It's very strange. And, I mean, to me, that's the best thing about him. He is not afraid of any situation. He will make the plays when he needs to. And that's the reason why right now, I mean, he's, you could argue he's one of, if not the best quarterback in the ACC so far this season through 6 weeks, or 7 weeks now. So, I mean, I think, there are a lot of people that are going to have that. I mean, if you guys think it's someone else, of course, let us know, make the argument for him. But let's head to the defensive side of the football. And I know who you're going to say right now. And I'm not even going to hesitate. I'm probably going to agree with you. But, when you look at the defensive side of the football, this is a unit, just as a whole, that has performed a lot better than I think a lot of us thought. I mean, we thought, okay, look, especially when it came to run defense, there wasn't there. I mean, you can only improve, can't get much worse than they've been the last 5 or 6 years with stopping the run. But this is a unit that, as you said last week when we talked about the game against Georgia Tech, we can finally trust this unit to make stops and not have to put all of the pressure on our offense in games.
Yeah, it's something that we haven't had a lot of trust in the last couple years. We thought we had it after the first 2 weeks the defense had made plays, and they kind of, fell back to their old ways against Wake Forest and App State. But after that, I mean, the Clemson game really showed. That's one of the most talented offenses in the country. You've got the prototypical quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. They've got great receivers, great running backs. And Carolina held them under 400 yards, only 21 points. And then you saw them take that success and build on it at Georgia Tech. And, they gave up 22 points, but some of that was in garbage time and whatnot. There's a chance because of just really how bad this Coastal is, this defense. Now, I'm not going to say dominant, but can be a really big part if this team was to make a run at the Coastal. You don't feel like Sam Howell's got to score 40 every week. And a big part of that is the play of Chaz Surratt, the guy that transferred from quarterback. And, when all this happened, we didn't think it wasn't going to work. And he looks more fluid at the linebacker spot than he did running Larry Fedora's offense. And I might say a lot more about Larry's system than Chaz as a player. But, I mean, I've watched him live 3 times, and he's everywhere.
Yeah.
Every time I've either been in the stadium or looking at the television, he's making plays, whether it's at the line of scrimmage, in the middle of the field, or hell, he's running downfield, swatting balls, doing whatever in the pass game. So really just been impressed with how he's transitioned from the quarterback to linebacker spot, put on some body weight, but you wouldn't tell because he still looks very fast out there in space. And, really found a gem for Jay Bateman to use moving forward with his defense.
I mean, look, the kid leads the team in tackles, 46 total tackles. 5.5 tackles for loss, which is tied for third on the team. There's 2 guys that are tied for first. And then when it comes to sacks, he's got 3 on the season, which is tied for second, and 2 pass deflections, like you said. So I agree with you. He's everywhere. I didn't get why it took until the Clemson game to pretty much start him. I mean, they were trying. Look, Dominic Ross has had a good season, but I feel like Chaz Surratt has shown to this point that he is the best linebacker on the team right now. I mean, that's hard to say because, look, Jeremiah Gemmel has had a hell of a season. But this guy is just different. I mean, you talked about it. He's everywhere. He's one of the most physical guys that I've seen on a Carolina defense in a long time. I mean, we saw it against Clemson. He runs in, on these blitzes, he doesn't really care. He'll take on a running back. He took on a couple of offensive linemen. That's just the way he plays. He plays with reckless abandon, and that's what you want to see. He's a guy that's developing as an open field tackler. I mean, he's missed some tackles. It's going to happen whenever you're still making that conversion over from quarterback to linebacker. And he's great out in space. You mentioned it. I mean, in past years, we've really had trouble with our linebackers having to cover those athletic running backs and tight ends. But this is a guy that's just different. He's been making those types of plays so far this season. So, I mean, he's definitely the front runner. I think this is closer on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to be honest with you, because I think Aaron Crawford has a really interesting case here. I mean, 29 total tackles, which is fourth on the team, 6.5 tackles for loss, tied for first, and 3 sacks, which is tied for second. And he's doing all of this out of the nose tackle spot, which, I think we felt was going to be a more normal position for him because of his size. But usually a nose tackle in a 3-4 defense is there to be a space eater, be a run stopper. Aaron Crawford's doing both. He's a guy that's getting pressure on the quarterback while also being able to be that guy in the middle that's shutting down the running lanes like he needs to.
He may not be the quote-unquote MVP of the defense. He's the most important part of what Carolina wants to do defensively. And we've known that for the last 2 years. He just couldn't stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And now he's finally healthier, and you see it every week in the stat sheet. He's in the backfield making plays. He's getting to the quarterback. He's always been very good in the run fit side of things. So, I see where you're coming from, where it's probably closer. I would still lean Surratt because really this came out of nowhere.
Right.
This wasn't expected for him to be arguably the best linebacker on the team, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Really took a position away from Dominique Ross, who hasn't been bad. It's just Surratt's been better.
Ross has been great. And what they're doing now, what they did against Georgia Tech, was they threw all 3 of them out there. They put Ross at outside linebacker, which I like a lot. He played outside linebacker in high school and was able to get after the quarterback a little bit, as well as do a great job of keeping contained when it came to run fits like you talked about. I think all 3 of them on the field, to me, that seems like your best option right there. That's going to be tough to run on if you're an ACC offense.
Well, it makes it easier when Chaz and Gimmel are very good flowing sideline to sideline.
Right.
And that's something that we haven't been good at when we were under Larry Fedora, was the linebacking play was not good flowing to the ball. But Chaz and Gimmel have the speed and really their instinct to find the ball and make a play on it. And that allows you for Jay Bateman to blitz a little bit more often when he can trust in the back end they're going to make plays.
Yeah, and the only – so, those are the 2. I would agree with you that I'd probably lean Surratt just because of, if you look at it, he's probably been the best offensive player throughout the season. I think Crawford is right behind him. And then the other one that I included in there that I thought we should talk about is Miles Wolfel, because, he had a phenomenal start to the season, 24 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 3 interceptions, and he did that in 3.5 games. Of course, now he hasn't played since the game against App State, injured his foot. But this guy was at the time of his injury one of the leading interception players in the country. And now, he's of course moving down those boards a little bit, but this is a guy that also feels like a really valuable piece for the Tar Heels. If they can get him back at some point of the season, that would be pretty huge.
Yeah, he really great start to the season. Right. Essentially won the game for Carolina in the season opener.
Pretty much,
Charlotte,
pretty much. Yeah.
After the coaching staff tried to screw it up with some of their decision making late in that ball game. But it's not just the interceptions; it's the tackling, which the team needed because Miles Dorn basically forgot how to tackle the first part of the year. He's kind of cleaned it up here recently.
He's been a lot better here. Yeah, definitely.
So that was good on that end. But yeah, it's just hard to say. Yeah, he's an MVP. He hasn't played in 3 weeks.
Right.
It'd be good to get him back. Hell, to get the whole secondary back, as they all seem hurt at this time of year.
Yeah.
But definitely gonna be another piece going into next year, as will be a senior in Jay Bateman's secondary.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about that secondary just yet because that gets me just so excited about what that team can be next year with all the pieces that they're returning. But I thought we was willing, it was something that we had to mention, just how good he performed in those first 3 games of the season. I think he'd be right in the conversation if he doesn't get injured, because you got to feel maybe he creates another turnover or 2. He was just that effective early in the season. Is there anybody else that we're wanting to put in this group in consideration? Of course, there's a couple other guys that you should, that have had good starts to the season that you might want to mention. I mean, like Jeremiah Gimel's a guy that, we've really liked how he's looked. He had 2 great camps the previous 2 years and really just didn't get a whole lot of playing time. Now he's finally getting the playing time, and he's living up to expectations. He's been fantastic. I mean, is there anybody else? I've got one more name, but I want to at least give you a chance that one more name that needs to be mentioned. I don't think he's in the MVP race, but he's a guy that's had a good season.
Pleasant surprise, Storm Duck filling in the secondary.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Maybe not by choice. It was just the fact that you had injuries and then the fact that, Greg Ross is not good.
Greg's got to start the
really
rest of the
allowed
season.
him to get some time on the field. And you saw it in the Clemson game. Made some plays in the secondary, if anyone did. And,
he did a good job against a guy in Justin Ross that's probably going to go top 2 rounds of the NFL draft at some point.
So, I mean, hey, you got an elite name and you're playing pretty good defensively. I'll take that. So
the other one that I was going to mention is Timon Fox, because he does have 6.5 tackles for loss, which is tied for the team lead. Leads the team in sacks with 4.5. The only thing for Timon is
it comes in bunches.
3.5 sacks came in the first 2 games of the year. And I mean, that's what we're looking for from him, is just a little more consistency. That's the reason I can't put him in the race. But I feel like he was definitely worth mentioning because, he is leading the team in sacks. He's had a pretty good start to his senior year. So we'll go with, okay, now this one, I'm intrigued here. I think, we're going to stick, because Chaz Surratt is in this category as well. His biggest overachiever so far this year. Now, it's interesting because is it Surratt or is it Javonte Williams? Because both of them have really solid arguments, because let's be real, we didn't see either guy being as productive as they have been so far this year.
I think I'm going to lean Javonte.
Wow,
just
I'm
because
shocked. Wow.
Was he not listed as the 3rd string running back? Like
in spring, there was some momentum as he went through fall, but you're right.
We entered the season expecting this to be more of a Michael Carter, Antonio Williams kind
with
of back.
With the sprinkle of Javonte.
And
that's not
that all changed with his performance in the opener against South Carolina here in Charlotte, and he's really never looked back. Really, I mean, he's taken away whatever little snaps Antonio Williams is getting because he runs harder. So I feel like there's more trust in 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1 if we need to get a yard. I'd much rather give it to Javonte, because the thing about him when he runs, and I see a lot when I watch Ezekiel Elliott run on Sundays, he's always falling forward, and because he's always carrying positive momentum.
Right.
So I mean, it's a toss up, but I would just lean Javonte, because I think there was a chance we could see Chaz flourish because he played on the defensive side of the ball here in high school. But maybe not to the level. Javonte, no one expected this, I don't think, this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting argument because Javonte, I mean, we remember him. He came in as, just a borderline 3-star. He was right on the edge of being a 2-star guy. He was a late addition to the class, a guy that most people looked at and said, okay, Larry, what are we bringing this guy in for? Like, is this just something that's a guy that we're bringing in because we just don't have enough guys to fill the class at the time? And I went back and watched this film. I thought, okay, this is not what this kid is. This kid will make an impact at some point. He has the ability to do something. I didn't see this coming, where he's the leading rusher. And in my mind, I think is, out of the 2 of them, I think is the most effective, the more consistent out of the 2. But, he's had a fantastic season. I'm going to go with Surratt, though, just because, this guy might be the best. We just talked about it. We put him as our defensive MVP. He is the best player on this defense. And that, is just amazing to me, because there are guys, we talked about Aaron Crawford, Miles Woolfolk. There are guys on this defense that are extremely talented that will be playing on Sundays, and Chaz Surratt looks like he could be one of those guys. I mentioned leads the team in tackles. He's, you mentioned everywhere on the field. He plays sideline to sideline, which is something that we just really haven't had since the Butch Davis era, maybe just a little bit after that with Kevin Reddick. That was probably the last guy that you could see doing that, but that was a Butch Davis guy that stuck around with Larry. It's just, he's blown everybody's expectations out of the water. And, as of right now, you feel like looking at him going forward, he's only going to get better, and he's still got a senior year ahead of him as well. the ceiling is extremely high for Chaz Surratt at linebacker. He's been phenomenal so far this year. So, I'm going to give the nod to Chaz, but it was definitely close. The other guy that I put on the list, because I did 3 for each one of them, I put Storm Duck as another guy that's been an overachiever, one of the guys that we could talk about. Like you mentioned, did such a great job coming in his first career start against Clemson, against one of the best wide receiving corps in the country, probably the best in the ACC. Only argument would maybe be Wake Forest. Carolina is pretty good as well, but I don't know if they're quite up there just yet. But he did a fantastic job. I thought he played well against Georgia Tech as well. Greg Ross was the man that really struggled against the Yellow Jackets. So I thought he was another guy that was worth mentioning. So we'll move on there. Let's go to best game of the season. I think there's only 2 that are in the running here, right? Like I put down the Georgia Tech game because it was a historic performance from your quarterback, but I mean it's Miami or South Carolina, right? I mean that's got to be the pick right there.
Right. Well, you want for as a team effort?
Best. I guess it's best game. I wouldn't say maybe best win. You could interpret it as well. But like out of those 2 games, which one do you think was the? I don't.
This is bad, but it's neither. It's Clemson. Even though you lost.
That's a loss? I couldn't put that on there because you lost the game.
I feel like that game more than the win over South Carolina, whenever Miami signified that Mac Brown was back. He had a team that was 27-point underdogs, and you effectively outplayed the best team in at the time in the country we thought of. Right now, I think we all have a different opinion of what Clemson is. Mm-hmm. And had a chance to win that game. With all the deficiencies, with the injuries in the backfield, with the rookie quarterback, with the wins, I think it's Miami just because of how you had to win the game. You had to convert a 4th down and 17 at a time in the game where your offense didn't. You didn't have. I don't think anyone had faith we were going to convert the play because the offense in the second half wasn't clicking like it did in the first half of that ball game. So I would probably lean Miami just because first game back for Mac Brown in Kenan Stadium. That was as good as atmosphere as I've ever seen in Kenan Stadium in all my years following Carolina football. We were there, so that kind of maybe had some personal bias towards that, being in the stadium to watch the comeback. But I'd say Clemson. I know why you can't because we lost the game,
right?
But in a lot of ways, you won the game.
Well, see, I'm gonna go with Miami. Because of the way that the team came back. I mean, I get, if you're looking effort-wise, Georgia Tech's probably the game you lean with. Either that or Clemson, one of those 2 games. But if you're looking at, the best, I would say the best win of the season is how I would phrase it. That's kind of what I was going for when I initially thought of the category. I would go with Miami because, look, it was a night game. First game back in Kenan for Mac Brown. You mentioned the environment was crazy, and you felt like, okay, if you win that game, 2-0, your season is heading in a great direction, a direction that we didn't think we would be heading to start the season because we thought, okay, one of the 2 games to start the season were going to be a loss. And the other thing is you knew if they won that game, Kenan was going to be electric for the rest of the season. People were going to show up to watch games there, and they have so far. So I thought, you combine that with the comeback. Just a great job by Howell to, a week after doing it against South Carolina, coming back from down 11 in the 4th quarter, he does it again, this time at home with 1 drive. There was no, we can punt it away and potentially have the ball back and give him another chance. It was, look, this is the 1 drive for you, kid. You got to lead us down and score a touchdown or else we're going to lose a game that we were up 17-3 in. He took the football, went straight down the field, and won the game with a great throw to Daz Newsome. So, I had to go with that for best game. Now we talk about best play. I mean, that touchdown to Daz Newsome has to be in there. Miles Woolfolk's 2nd interception to seal the game against South Carolina. And then the other one that I put in there was De'Ami Brown's one-handed touchdown grab that, of course, closed Carolina to within 5 of South Carolina and was their first touchdown in the game in Charlotte.
I'd probably go the 4th and 17 conversion play just because
Okay,
that
well,
allowed.
there you go. There's one that's not on the list. That was a good one.
That allowed to extend the drive and get the touchdown to Newsome to effectively win the game. But, I mean, you just got to look at the situation, the fact that before a questionable review, Carolina was lined up to punt the football.
Yes.
And then over the course of the timeout, Phil Longo convinced Mac Brown to go for it. There's not many plays in your playbook for 4th down and 17, but you were able to get something drawn up and convert it, and so that's where I would go. Just because I don't know about you, I didn't think we were going to convert the play, and it wasn't just because I'm not a negative thing. It's just how many times you see 4th and 17 converted.
Yeah, it's pretty rare.
And a lot of it was bad on Miami just because the way they lined up. Whereas I'd have put 8 defenders at the first down mark and said, "Okay, we're going to cover your ass," and they didn't. And Sam Howell escaped me in a nice throw. I think it was to Toe Groves who caught the ball.
Toe Groves was the man that made the
and so that's where I would go.
It's a good one.
The Army Brown catch was phenomenal. That was what we expected from him to be able to make this kind of
not that catch.
Circus
That
plays.
was wild.
But, I mean, you also got to look at the Sam Howell's throw against South Carolina through 3 Gamecock defenders. The fact that he somehow got it through there.
The only reason that I didn't include that was that, I mean, that takes a lot of skill, but that play was also just a ridiculous amount of luck.
Third down conversion in the 4th quarter.
That's a good point. There's no argument.
Carolina doesn't win that game without that conversion happening. So
True. Yeah, you're looking – those are 2 really big plays. I went with Miles Woolfolk's second interception against South Carolina because I'm going to be honest. They were moving the ball extremely well. Both times that he intercepted the passes. I
was convinced they were going to find a way to screw it up.
I mean, and that's kind of how you felt as well was, okay, we've been here so many times over the last couple of seasons, especially against FBS opponents, and we have found a way to let these games slip away. Where we've been in control, we felt, okay, we're going to find a way to win it. But in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, something's going to happen here. And that was kind of how it felt in that game as well was, okay, they're going to find a way to put together a drive. And all of a sudden, they're starting to move the ball down the field. They had some confidence. Right before that, they had gone to the end zone and just overshot, I believe, was it Brian Edwards? Maybe it was one of the tight ends, too, right down the middle of the field. And I'm like, okay, they're starting to find something here. I was thinking, okay, in past years, we've seen as the game's gone along, the defense has started to struggle. They just haven't had enough stamina to keep up with the opposing offenses. And Miles Woolfolk comes up with a huge interception on the play. I mean, it was a bad throw by Jake Bentley. Woolfolk was right there, sitting in the zone, made a great play. But it was just huge. That was the one that I went with because I truly believe that South Carolina probably would have driven and scored a touchdown there and taken the lead again. So I got to give Miles Woolfolk that one because, I mean, that's a big reason why they won that game. I mean, that's the main reason, in my opinion, that they held on to win that game. So, that was a huge win for Carolina to start the season off on national television. Mac Brown's first game back on the sidelines as the Tar Heel head coach. They get a victory over South Carolina. Now, of course, they tried to give it away at the end with whatever that was, taking the knee with 10 seconds to go on 4th down that we still are trying to figure out. But, I give it to Miles Woolfolk. You go with Toe Groves and Sam Howell hooking up on the 4th and 17 play, which was phenomenal as well. So the last one that we'll do here is best coaching job. Now, I should have phrased this better because we have a response that I'm going to read here in just a second from one of our fans who sent it in. When I say best coaching job, I really was looking at the assistants on the staff. So not including Mac Brown, who has been the best coach on the staff so far this year?
It's easily been Jay Bateman with what he's done defensively with the unit. We've read the stats.
Okay.
How they've improved. But you also got to look, where this team's gotten a lot better. The defensive line's a lot better. So Tim Cross has done a pretty good job.
Okay.
The linebacking core is, which was a really big question. Now you kind of count on with the secondary being so banged up. So you look at there. Offensively, Tim Brewster's had a really big impact on the recruiting trail. The tight ends haven't been, productive in the offense.
They've been really good in run blocking situations. I will give them that, yes.
But I'd probably look at the biggest question we had on the offensive side of the ball, the hires, was the offensive line coach, Stacy Searles.
Yes.
And the offensive line, sure. I look at it every week, and they've held up all through 6 weeks. So, but Jay Bateman is easily the answer for this.
So Jay Bateman was my guy as well, because this defense, as we've seen, especially against Clemson, is just a completely different unit. They have confidence in themselves now. I mean, you look at the fact that they're holding teams to 160.8 rushing yards. And here's the thing. Most teams in the country would say, you're freaking out over holding opponents to 160 yards rushing a game. This is a Carolina team that has allowed over 200 yards rushing in 6 straight years. I mean, that's unheard of. Nobody in the country does that. You usually find a way to improve enough to at least hold them to, 180, 190. No, this team let up over 200 yards on the ground in 6 straight seasons. I mean, Jay Bateman, what he's done, and also the fact, look at the position that he also coaches, safeties, which is just beaten all to hell right now. Miles Dorn has stayed healthy, but everybody else, you look, Miles Woolfolk out for an extended period of time. Cameron Kelly comes in for 1 game, gets injured, out for the season. Now Don Chapman's back there. He comes out against Georgia Tech. First game that he starts, he intercepts a pass. He's working wonders with these guys, and that's amazing. I put Tommy Thigpen on there as well, co-defensive coordinator. But really, Jay Bateman is the face of that defense right now when it comes to, who the DC is. But Tommy Thigpen is doing a great job. He's also the linebackers coach, and you can see the difference in this linebacking core from last year even to this year. Now, he was on the staff last year, but you can tell now Mac is trusting him a little bit more. He's gotten, what he likes to do with his linebackers in place, and these guys are really responding well. And it's paid off big time. And then when I looked at the offensive side of the ball, I had to go with the leader of the chain-moving gang, and I went with Robbie Gillespie, because look at that running game this year as opposed to what it's been the last few years, where they have struggled to run the ball, even with the fact that they couldn't throw it down the field. This is a totally different run game. Both Michael Carter and Javonte Williams have been a big part of why this team has been able to move the ball effectively. He's helped to open up the passing game, take a little bit of pressure off of Sam Howell, which was what we asked the running backs to do before the season. So I think Robert Gillespie at least deserves a shout-out. He's done a hell of a job. So I think those are all the awards that we had. I don't think there's any other ones that we were wanting to give out. So, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Anything that we want to mention about this team as they sit here at the midway point of the season at 3-3?
Yeah, they've already won as many games they had the last 2 years in any season, so it's been a lot more fun doing the podcast. And only last year, this time last year, we were pretty much saying, when the hell are we firing Fedora?
Most of the time, it was like, okay, so we're going to do a football podcast before we do basketball, right? Yeah, we're doing that so we can just kind of get it out of the way and then move on to talk about basketball where we have some hope. Because you're sitting there at 1-5 on the season. You're really not saying to yourself, man, this is a team that can find a way to win a game. No, I agree. It's definitely been a lot better. You see where this team sits right now in the ACC Coastal. 2-1 in conference, tied with Virginia atop the ACC Coastal. It feels like this team, we have an interview that I'm going to put right after this that you guys can listen to on this midseason edition, where we talk to Bill Bender of the Sporting News about where this team's at. There is a reason to be confident that this team can find a way to win the ACC Coastal for the first time since 2016.
Yeah, you just went to Georgia Tech and won somewhere you haven't won. Now you get to Blacksburg where you haven't won but twice since Mac Brown left or they joined the ACC. You get Duke at home. Mm-hmm. You get Virginia at home. You take care of those. You've owned Pittsburgh since Pittsburgh entered the league. It really sets up for Carolina to really maybe be the odds-on favorite. They are favored to win every game the rest of the way, according to ESPN's Football Power Index. Don't know how much you read into that, but no one would have thought that when the season started.
Right.
And that look, It's year one under Mac Brown. If you would have told me we'd be 3-3 at the midway point with a chance to win the Coastal, I'd take it. They're on track to make a bowl game, which is where I had this team in the preseason. At 7-5, they're on pace to do 6-6 or better. At least it's going to be a lot of fun watching the rest of the way, and we're watching Mac Brown just continue to prove why he was the right guy to come lead this program.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. I think that, pretty much, if he making a bowl game was kind of where our expectations were at, there's a chance that they could definitely overshoot that. If they win the ACC Coastal, that is, I know there were some fans in the preseason saying this team could be 8-4, 9-3. Look, you might have believed that because you're a little bit biased and you just wanted to have some faith in Carolina. But if we were being serious, I don't think anybody thought that this team was going to be in the ACC Coastal hunt. Mainly, or late in the season, last 2 weeks of the year, I'll say. Mainly because we thought, okay, either Virginia is going to be really good, Virginia Tech's going to step up and play for Fuente. Miami, they've got enough talent. Maybe they finally get it done. I was not one of the ones that believed that. I thought that Manny Diaz being a first-year coach would definitely show up, and that has so far. But this team, as of right now, like you mentioned, you got the game on the road at Virginia Tech, which, you guys can, we're going to preview that coming up later this week. You guys can hear that one. But, you got a feeling, if they win that game, you're sitting at 4-3 on the season, 3-1 in the conference. You get the big game, as you mentioned, against Duke. But those are your top two teams right now in the Coastal, besides Carolina, Duke and Virginia. You get both of them at home. Then you go to Pittsburgh, which, as you mentioned, is tough. But it's a Thursday night. The good thing for Carolina, another bye week, so you'll have 12 days to prepare for them. They've had their number since they've come into the ACC Coastal. So, look, they haven't lost a game to them so far since they've been in the ACC, despite some really good opportunities for Pittsburgh to win games. Both times really coming in Chapel Hill where they had their best chances. So Carolina, I think, they'll be favored in that game, as you mentioned. You got Mercer, and then you close the season at NC State, who's not quite looking like the team that some thought they could be. So it sets up. Carolina's going to have a heck of a chance. And, we were able to talk to Bill Bender about it. So we'll let you guys listen to that now. Here's our interview with Bill Bender of the Sporting News. And we started out by asking him what he thought of where the Tar Heels are at so far in this 2019 season.
They're definitely ahead of schedule. They've been one of the better stories of the season, even though they suffered the 3 straight losses, lose to Wake Forest, App, and Clemson by a combined total of 10 points. I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't take that that's a Tar Heels fan. So I think, the question now is, can they get hot on the back half, take care of business against Virginia Tech, and maybe make a run at the Coastal? And, when you're dealing with the Coastal, anybody but Georgia Tech could really win this division right now. So I think, ahead of schedule is how I'd use it. Everybody remembers what happens against Clemson, but I think that's just a reflection of what Mac's done in a short amount of time.
Well, you talk about, what this team has done being ahead of schedule. It seems like the quarterback position is definitely ahead of schedule as well. Sam Howell, we knew coming in a former 4-star prospect. This was a guy that was going to come in and be able to do some things. But, this is just a great overall start because he's taking care of the football. He's able to move this team up and down the field, especially when he needs to. He's had some moments where he struggled, but this kid is really kind of, I'm not going to say lighting the world on fire, but look, he's leading the ACC in passing yards, so he's clearly doing something right.
Yeah, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, like you said, leading in passing yards and a high quarterback rating ahead of schedule for sure. And that's the difference a big time quarterback can make. I know going into the season, big part of who I was going to pick to win the Coastal was based on who had the best quarterback play, and in theory that was going to be Bryce Perkins. But Howell's definitely going to have them in the mix. Now, can you be consistent with each week now on both sides of the ball? Can you keep that running game going? Can you make enough stops against teams that really, quite frankly, they should beat? And how do they handle that going forward? I think there's a lot of momentum in North Carolina's favor, and on the recruiting trail, you're going to see that because guys are going to want to play with Howell. receiver's going to want to play with the guy that can get him the football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And, we talk about the defense. This is a unit that, I think still nationally is probably not going to be talked about as much, but this is a team that is just so much different than it's been the last couple of years. It's finally a group that you can rely on to get a stop when you need them to get a stop. When you look at this defense, if they can survive all the injuries, I mean, this unit is one that can definitely help this Tar Heel team stay in the Coastal race and could potentially keep, maybe have them around for an ACC Coastal title, right?
Yeah, and, they're in a stage like, I think Bobby Bowden coined the phrase about, when you build a program, you start, you want to start, you're losing big when you take over. Then you try to get it down to losing close, then winning close, then winning big. And right now, North Carolina's probably in the winning some close games, losing some close games. And you see that with the points allowed and the points given. And when you're playing games in the 20s and 30s, that's going to happen. So I guess the question for me is, can they continue to generate a pass rush? You've got a couple players, Surratt, Fox, three or more sacks. You need more sacks. You need to create more turnovers in these games and give that offense a chance to, flip the field quickly and win some of these games that are going to be decided. I mean, I think that they're going to play close games this year. So how many more can you win, and can you avoid that, I guess not inexplicable because everybody's about the same, but just making sure you win all those big games.
Right. No, and I mean, I think that, they've got some familiarity with playing a lot of those games early in the season. I mean, really outside of the Georgia Tech game, every single game has been close and come down to the final possession. So that should definitely help this team. You mentioned, they should be favored in a lot of these games going forward. I don't really know because, with the ACC Coastal, it is just a complete toss-up. But, I mean, when you look at this Carolina team, where do you kind of place them when it comes to ranking the teams that you think could win the ACC Coastal as we head towards the second half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it'll come down to the road games, really. You got to take care of business at home. But, I mean, that starts this week. Virginia Tech's been kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type team. Is that the team that, are they going to go there and lay an egg, or you go there and then you score another big win? That's one that you definitely got to watch because, I mean, they're a team also 4-2, playing in the 20s, giving up games in the 20s. That just smells like another 31-28 type game. And the thing that makes it dangerous this week is Virginia Tech's kind of found their footing a little bit. They beat Miami. They beat Rhode Island. And all that came after they lost to Duke by 35. So a lot of people on the outside will look at that and say the ACC is terrible and a bunch of average and all that kind of stuff. The truth is you've probably got a bunch of 8-win programs lumped together in the same division. And that's where you build from there. I mean, nobody in that division, other than North Carolina is probably the only team that's going to challenge Clemson this year because they actually challenged them.
Okay, interesting, because that was going to be my next question. So you do believe that out of all the teams that are still in the race, we're taking Georgia Tech out of it. You think that North Carolina right now is the biggest threat out of the ACC Coastal to Clemson? I mean, we're not saying that that's a huge threat, but you think they're the biggest?
Right now, I mean, yeah, because they actually played them tough. And I could see, what I could see happening. And we have North Carolina in the Orange Bowl in our latest bowl projections, and it's probably timely to talk to you just because we think they're the best bet to win the Coastal. But as I told, I think it was on Mac Attack this morning in Charlotte, and I said, if you say anybody but Georgia Tech can win the Coastal, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. So that's what we've got to sort out first. And I bet you somewhere in the back of their minds, Clemson wouldn't mind a rematch with North Carolina and Charlotte because they almost were treated like they lost that game. So if they get North Carolina and Charlotte, they could, in theory, go out and try to right that, try to blow them out and be looked at a little bit different. That's probably the most visible team they can play left, other than maybe this week against Louisville. I know that's the other division, Anthony, but that's a team that I think is trending in the right direction with their first-year coach. They made the right hire with Scott Satterfield.
Okay, no, that's perfectly fine because the last question that I was going to ask you is right now, if this Tar Heel team can get some of these wins on the board, is there a chance that by the end of this season we could look at this team if they do what they need to do and take care of business and say this is the second best team in the ACC when all is said and done this year?
Sure. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think you're seeing, like, I know you follow the recruiting in that area a little bit better than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing the names pop up that are signing on to play for Mac, and I wrote about that before the beginning of the season. I kind of sensed that would happen. For any of your listeners, I mean, if you go back and look at the end of Mac Brown's first tenure at North Carolina, there were just NFL guys all over the place on that roster. And a lot of those guys are coaching now. I mean, Dre Bly's coaching, and those guys were around Mac the first time. So, yeah, I think if they go maybe 5-1 down the stretch, finish 8-4, because you leave room for one loss when you have all these inconsistent teams.
Right.
They would have a chance maybe to go to Charlotte and build off that. And I'm not saying they're going to beat Clemson, because I don't think anybody in the ACC will this year. But that's how you learn to kind of position yourself to do that. And I guess the key is, can North Carolina take care of business at home and win 2 out of 3 on the road against Pitt, NC State, and Virginia Tech this week? If you believe they can do that, and I think it's possible, then yeah, they'll have a chance to play for the ACC Championship. I think. I mean, everybody's got a couple losses already.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, Carolina tied atop the ACC Coastal right now in the standings with Virginia, and Vegas definitely has Carolina favored. I know they have them favored on the road at Virginia Tech. You would think that they would potentially be favored in both the Pittsburgh and NC State games as well. So, hey, Bill, thanks for stopping on with us, man. Great stuff. That's awesome that you guys have us in the Orange Bowl. I think this team's trending in the right direction. I don't know if they'll end up in the Orange Bowl. That would be phenomenal, especially for a first year under Mac Brown. But things are looking up for Carolina right now. Definitely a lot better than where they were sitting at last year. So thanks for stopping by and talking a little Tar Heel football with us at the midway point.
How about we do it again at the end of the season and see where Mac takes that team? And thanks as always for having me on. I enjoyed coming on, and it's a lot different tenure than the last couple times I came on your show. Tenor, not tenure. I'm gonna get that right before your listeners catch on. But thanks so much for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Bill. Thank you so much.
So we want to thank Bill Bender for stopping by with us on this edition of the podcast. Remember that you can go to Google Play or Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn.com, as well as the Radio.com app. They'll have everything for you there where you can listen to the podcast. Or you can just go to the website. That's the best place to listen to it, HeelToughBlog.com. You can go there, listen to the podcast, and then after you're done, head over to the news section of the website so you can check out all of the latest articles that we've got on this Tar Heel football team. I got my midseason grades coming out later today. That's going to be awesome for you guys to check out, a grade for each position group. That was something that I've been working on over the last couple of days, and I think that'll be a really exciting article for you guys. Make sure you check out everything that we had from our scouting visit to Mallard Creek High School with Trenton Simpson, a guy that the Tar Heels are feverishly trying to flip with the help of a current Tar Heel player, Cameron Kelly. So read about not only his performance, but a little bit about his relationship with Cameron and how that's playing a factor in his recruiting. As well as you can go over and check out some of the basketball articles that we got on the website. We got something up about Cole Anthony being selected as the freshman of the year for the preseason polls of the ACC that was selected at Media Day. And then also you can check out the article on Caleb Love, as well as we've got an article coming up on Garrison Brooks, right? What are you going to write about old Garrison?
I love how you just put me on the spot there. Just going to put the preseason stuff that Garrison Brooks got awarded at ACC Media Days. Cole Anthony just got announced that he'd be on the Bob Cousy Award watch list, which, of course, is for the nation's top point guard.
Right.
Going to probably go home and write something about that. Okay. I love how my 4 a.m. morning and off day turns into 3 articles to write for you.
Hey, you suggested that you were going to write this. This is not my fault.
And I'm still not getting paid.
Hey, I didn't say they're going up later tonight. They're going to be up soon. Make sure you guys check that out. We got basketball. Mainly what I'm trying to say is we got basketball stuff on the website. Make sure you guys go check that out. Heel Tough Vlog, not only covering football now, we're covering basketball as well.
We've got basketball, and I'm trying to pull some strings to get curling on there. We just got to get a curling program started.
We had to
Carolina.
Get this joke right? We had it on the Roy's Boys one, so we had to get this joke in. The diving team are looking for someone to cover. The diving team I believe there is a
rowing team,
polo. We're going to look for that. Bowling team,
fencing.
Fencing's real. Our fencing team, I think, is like number 3 or 4 in the nation. We have to get a women's soccer person, right? Like we are a women's soccer school, if we're being real honest. We don't have that. So we got to, eventually, look, we're expanding to basketball. That's pretty much what we're trying to say. Football, basketball on the Heel Tough Blog website. Eventually, we will have a baseball writer somewhere. We're going to find someone that is really into covering the baseball team. We'll eventually have that as well. And who knows? Maybe we will add a couple of the other sports on there if we can find someone that's really invested about writing to cover those teams. So if you are interested, of course, reach out to us. You can do that at Future Tar Heel on Twitter for me, at Joshua Marlin 5 for him. Either way, it doesn't really matter. We're going to communicate it to each other. So if you're interested in writing for us, even if you don't want to cover curling, if you want to cover a little bit of football or basketball with us, just let us know. We're always looking to have some other opinions on the website, as well as, eventually down the line, maybe getting you involved, having you on the podcast for a couple episodes as well. So want to thank Josh for stopping by with me doing this edition of the podcast. Want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.